So Vice News interviewed Tulsi Gabbard, and you'll never guess what they asked her about. And by that I mean you'll guess exactly what they asked her about. It'll be the very first thing that pops in your mind. That is the thing that they asked her about, because that's all the media has ever asked her about, ever. And also take a look at how they frame this discussion. Watch.
Where she aligns with President Trump is wanting to bail on conflicts on foreign soil, like the one in Afghanistan.
Now, there's an issue that's central to all of these that I think it's important to address, and that is the cost of war. Our foreign policy is inseparable from our domestic policy, because as we're talking about the needs of our people, that requires resources, that requires investment. We as taxpayers are spending $4 billion every month in Afghanistan.
She shocked people in 2017 when she played diplomat and flew to Syria, where she met with President Bashar al-Assad, a despot who's brutalized his people.
Whatever you think about President Assad, the fact is that he is the president of Syria. In order for any peace agreement, in order for any possibility of a viable peace agreement to occur, there has to be a conversation with him.
Do you believe that Assad was behind the use of chemical weapons that he used against his own people?
There have been a lot of different chemical weapons attacks, and I think they have been perpetrated by the Assad government, as well as other terrorist groups and other actors on the ground.
Sure,
so the tough questions that I ask come from the understanding that I will do all that I can to not allow a single one more of my brothers and sisters in uniform to be used in a war being waged on false pretenses, or to put their lives at risk unnecessarily in another regime change war.
When you say false pretenses, though, U.S. officials determined that Assad did use these chemical weapons against his own people.
Didn't we hear that about Iraq?
Right.
We heard that from U.S. officials. We heard that from our Secretary of State.
My
We heard that
question
from
for
people
you,
in
though,
the
is
UN.
you sit on the Homeland Security Committee, you sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee in Congress. You take in information from U.S. officials. Do you believe that information when you receive it?
It's not a matter of, well, do you believe? Do I sit there and believe what someone's telling me on face value? No. And it's the responsibility that I feel I have to my fellow Americans, to my brothers and sisters in uniform, to not accept anything at face value and to always dig for the truth.
Gabbard's pro-military, anti-interventionist view has helped her amass more than $6 million in her war chest. But she's a long-shot candidate, one who's already being primaried in her congressional re-election race. Plus, she has a little less than a week to qualify for the next debate.
So they titled this video, Tulsi Gabbard is extremely anti-war and still defending her visit with Assad. That's what they titled this video. If you noticed at the beginning, the way they set up the conversation about foreign policy was, they said, quote, where she aligns with Trump, and then they go on to describe how she wants to get out of Afghanistan. It's really stunning to me that these people don't realize how terrible they are at their job. I mean, they really are, maybe without even trying, doing the bidding of the military-industrial complex, because the default setting is, okay, so delegitimize that idea up front. Where she aligns with Trump, that's the way of trying to say, like, silly, ridiculous, crazy person. Where she agrees with Trump. Oh my God, Trump is bad. Oh, this must be bad. But it's about getting out of Afghanistan. I got news for you. The most recent poll I saw in Afghanistan was all the way back in 2013, and it was only 17% of the country that wanted to still be there. So that means the war in Afghanistan is more unpopular than the war in Vietnam. And the way Vice News sets up this conversation is to say, where she aligns with Trump. How about where she aligns with the overwhelming majority of the American people? How about that? By the way, it's also not true that Trump is getting us out of Afghanistan. He's not. He's not getting us out. We're still there. Even in a best case scenario, we're talking about taking out not even half of the troops that are there. So what are you talking about? Keeping thousands of troops there? That's not withdrawing. So you're even giving Trump too much credit by implying that, like, he owns this issue of getting out of Afghanistan. That's nonsense. He's not even doing it. So that's incredibly annoying. Now, the other thing is, and this part pissed me off, look at the framing of the conversation on Syria. The whole point of the interviewer is to prod Tulsi to say, you know, hey, I don't agree with U.S. intelligence, and I don't think Assad used chemical weapons. But Tulsi's response there was actually brilliant, because what she said is, well, hold on now. Like, they're trying to make it seem like it's a crazy idea to not believe U.S. intelligence. But Tulsi's point was, well, what the hell happened in the Iraq War? Were you asleep through that entire episode? Because they lied. Brazenly. Clearly. Or at the very least, if you don't want to say lied, they got it wrong. They just got it wrong. But we know now that what they said was not true. I mean, the original arguments were that, you know, Saddam Hussein was working with Osama bin Laden on 9/11. That was total nonsense. And then they move the goalposts and say, oh, Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. Well, that also wasn't true. And the implication was he has weapons of mass destruction. He's going to use them on us, which is beyond ridiculous. And they just kept moving the goalposts. And finally, where did they wind up? They wound up on the position of, oh, he's just a really bad dictator. So therefore, it's the moral thing to want to topple him. But what they don't tell you is, at the height of Saddam Hussein's atrocities, we were arming him and backing him. As he was massacring Kurds, we were arming him and backing him. So, just so everybody knows, the idea that, oh, we care about freedom and liberty and democracy and justice and human rights, it's just fundamentally not true. So when Tulsi comes along and she says, hey, I'm skeptical of the reports on Assad because of what happened with Saddam Hussein, we know that they want to overthrow Assad just like they wanted to overthrow Saddam Hussein. So why wouldn't they? What, they have some sort of moral opposition to, you know, making a claim like, oh, he did the chemical attacks? No, they did the same thing with Saddam Hussein. They said he had weapons of mass destruction, so we got to act. It's possible that this is the same thing. It's possible it's not, but it's possible it is the same thing for sure. Why are you treating it like it's a crazy idea? And also, by the way, let's be clear, another reason why many people are skeptical is because, according to a study that came out maybe 3 years ago or so, at least 60% of the rebels remaining in Syria are jihadist rebels. They have some sort of sworn affiliation to any of a number of jihadist groups. So, you know, do you think that it's impossible that perhaps they were involved in some chemical attacks? Do you think that jihadist groups are abiding by international law? So that's the thing, is there's no, like, they don't give you any context, any detail, any specifics, and they act like it's a crazy idea to question what our intelligence officials are saying, when the default assumption should be the intelligence officials are full of shit, because historically, they're full of shit. So I just hate it. She constantly gets treated like a buffoon, and probably, and I'm not kidding about this, the one issue that she is most correct on is the one issue where they try to act like she's the most insane. And that really gets under my skin, man.